Okay, now I think you can hear the mic. Probably can't hear ennui still, so let me try and fix that. Yeah, it's just this happens sometimes. It's really it's really annoying.
Oh, yay, Lynn can hear now. Can
Okay,
you hear both of us, Lynn?
Yeah, I should be able to hear both now.
Whoopee!
All right, yeah, very sorry about that audio issues.
I do feel like that means you should maybe start over.
Yes, I probably should start over here. I've got all this stuff up already.
Oh,
okay,
God.
so
I'm so screwed right now.
Okay.
Shoot, this sucks.
So let me go back to the beginning. Okay, so let me on the leftmost box here. We're talking about how you actually initially build a hand, and this is kind of the most basic rule in Mahjong: is that a complete hand has to have a pair and it has to have 4 blocks of 3 tiles, and these blocks of 3 tiles can either be sequences or triples. Those are the only things that they can be. Like for an example of a sequence is the 2 3 4 that we see there, and an example of a triple is the 3 3 3. So. And just a minor comment is that the wind and dragon tiles, and in general the honor tiles, can't be used in sequences, only in triples. So you might think that, the red dragon, green dragon, and white dragon could be combined into a sequence. You can't actually do that. And speaking of the honors, we see the honors listed in the middle here. We have the white dragon, which is called a Haku, the green dragon, which is called a Hatsu, and the red dragon, which is called a Chun. And you don't really need to know those Japanese names, but it can be useful because they're commonly used. And then we have the winds, which is the east, south, west, and north. The Ton is the east wind, Nan is the south wind, Sha is the west wind, and Pei is the north wind. And you see here that on Mahjong Soul you have the convenient option of having them labeled. Like the Haku is labeled WH for white dragon, the Hatsu is labeled G for green dragon, and the north tile, which was discarded, is labeled N for north. And we see the west and the north up there that the player across is discarded. But it's useful to be able to identify these symbols and learn them over time. It does take a while to learn these symbols, but they're not that hard to learn. Because if you're using another platform, they may not be labeled like this, or if you're playing in real life, they won't be labeled like this. So it's just useful to know. And if people use those terms, it's useful to know what the heck they're talking about. And finally, on the right here, we have these different suits. The So tiles, also called bamboo tiles, numbered 1 through 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We see the 1 tile is a bird, and the rest of them look like bamboo sticks. And then you have the Mon tiles, which are also called symbols or cracks, labeled 1 through 9. And those are the 1 and 2 are easy. As it goes to 4, 5, 6, they're a little bit harder to recognize as being numbers. You have to learn what those actually, how to actually read those, unless you have the labels like we have here in Mahjong Soul, where we see the 6 is labeled as 6. The 6 mon is labeled as 6, and you don't necessarily have to learn that. Although again, it is useful in case you play in real life, or in case you play on a different platform. It's just useful to be able to read those, and it's fun to be able to read those. And finally, we have the pin, also called dots or circles, and we have the tiles 1 through 9 listed there, and those just look like little dots or little pins. I think calling them pins is just fine. That seems like a good description to me, and we don't need to call them dots at all. But it's useful to know these Japanese terms, so, mon, and pin, and to use those, because those are very commonly used, and if you don't know what that means, then you might be lost. Or honestly, if you're talking to people who talk about Mahjong, you'll probably learn those pretty quickly. So yeah, just some basic terminology on the tiles, basic way of how we complete a hand. We make 4 blocks that are either sequences of 3 or triples, and we make a pair. And once you get to the point where you have it complete, except you're missing 1 tile, then you can hit Rishi, and as soon as your block is discarded, as soon as your missing tile is discarded by someone else, or if you draw it yourself, in either case, you win. And you'll get some lovely points. That you can play that way and just not pay attention to anything else, and you get through a game, and sometimes you'll win if you use any kind of if you use your intelligence in order to discard things that are bad and keep things that are good in a very basic way. And I can talk about what that means, discarding things that are bad and keeping things that are good. Let me bring up the blocks here, and let me hide the honors, which are kind of in the way. Okay, so we have a few different kinds of like incomplete blocks that you might want to keep in your hand, because they can be built on very easily compared to just like isolated tiles, like a 3 sitting out in the middle of nowhere with nothing next to it. You have the Dianmen, which is the 2-sided block, and it has 2 adjacent simple tiles, like 3, 4, or 5, 6. And you have the Kanchan, middle block. And yeah, in Ennui is showing, we have an example there with the 3-so and the 4-so next to each other. That's a Dianmen block. And we have the Kanchan, which is 2 number tiles with a single gap in the middle, like a 1-3 mon or a 5-7 mon, or like Ennui is indicating the 2-4 pin there. And finally, we have the worst kind of block, the terrible block, Penchan, which is a terminal and its adjacent tile. And there is an example of that here as well, the 8-9. That's a Penchan, because it's the terminal and the tile next to it. So it's going to have to be either a 1-2 or an 8-9 to be a Penchan. And those are the worst kind because you have to draw. There's only one tile you can draw to complete that block. And also, it's very difficult to upgrade it to something better. Like the 2-4 pin, if you draw the 5 pin, you'll be left with a Dianmen. With the 8-9, really the only thing you can draw to upgrade it would be like that 6-so next to that 8-so makes it a Kanchan, but you can't upgrade it to a Dianmen. And that block Dianmen, that's kind of hard to say, but that's also a term that's commonly used because those are the best kind of blocks. And of course, people are going to be talking about them a lot. So yeah, the Dianmen, the Kanchan, and the Penchan. A very simple way to play is first you get rid of isolated tiles that are connected to nothing, and like honor tiles that are by themselves. Like you have a single west tile, you don't have a pair, you just get rid of the west tile. You have a single like 1 that's not connected to anything, you just get rid of it. The next worst thing that you can get rid of is the Penchan, like the 8-9. Just drop the Penchan because you have better stuff. You have Kanchans and Dianmens that you can use. And the next thing better than a Penchan is a Kanchan. If you don't have any Penchans, but you have some Kanchans, you don't have any isolated tiles, you don't have any isolated honor tiles, you don't have anything like that, okay, you can resort to getting rid of your Kanchan blocks. And finally, if you have like 4 different Dianmen blocks, or if you have 5 of them rather, then you may need to drop one of them because that's too many. Eventually you're going to have to get rid of one if you want to complete the hand, right? So there are some situations where you would end up dropping a Dianmen block. Oh, and it looks like Ennui has gotten into a state where winning is possible. And here is able to win due to having that triple of red dragons, or chun. And maybe now we can speak a little bit about... let me get rid of these block shapes and get rid of this panel here. And also, heck, while we're at it, why don't we... what's the last one? Suits. Okay. Trying to remember what it's named. Oh, a double run. So 2 people both won off of the same tile. That can happen too. Yeah, so just one with the red dragon there. So we can start talking about how you can win. Besides just declaring Richi, you can also get Yaku. And a Yaku is kind of like in poker, 3 of a kind or something like that. It gives you a higher score. It's a similar thing in Mahjong that if you get a Yaku, you can get a higher score if you start stacking Yaku. And you need at least 1 in order to actually win. If you don't have any Yaku at all, then there's no way that you can actually win the hand. And stuff like Richi is something that counts as a Yaku. That's something that allows you to win the hand. So that's why you can if nothing else, you can just keep your hand closed, and keeping your hand closed, not calling Chi or Pon at any point allows you to call Richi, which is what allows you to win. But if you are able to get a Yaku, and let me pull up let me see here. Yaku. I've got this Yaku here. But I have an earlier Yaku here somewhere. It's not this, right? I may just have to describe these, because I'm not finding... Gosh. I wonder if I accidentally deleted this or something. But okay, let me just... unfortunately, it'd be nice to be able to pull up this panel that has examples. But I can describe a few different yaku that can be used. And let me bring up tile types here. So there's some different tile types that I've already alluded to. So you have the number tiles, which are tiles numbered 1 through 9. The simple tiles, which are tiles numbered 2 through 8. And the terminal tiles, which are the tiles 1 and 9. And then the honor tiles, which we've already talked about, the winds and the dragons. So one yaku that you can get is called all simples. And that's if you have a hand made just of tiles 2 through 8. And that sounds kind of... When I first heard that, it sounded kind of arbitrary. Like, why is it just tiles 2 through 8? And the reason is, it makes a lot more sense to me when I hear this terminology. Okay, it's a hand that's only simple tiles because it's not terminal tiles and it's not honor tiles. So it's all simples. Somehow that makes it make more sense to me. So if you open your hand, if you use chi and pon, chi to call a sequence from the player to your left and pon to call a triple from any player, if you use those, you can open your hand so long as you are only using tiles between 2 and 8, and you'll get the all simples yaku. That's one that you can get. Another you can get is pinfu, which is like an all sequences yaku. So if you get 4 sequences in a pair, if you keep your hand closed, you get pinfu. So you don't necessarily need to call Richi in that situation, but if you do, it will just add to your score, because getting more yaku will give you more and more score. And we can talk about how you calculate score a bit later. It can be a little bit complicated, but we'll keep it simple here. Let me make sure there's no questions or anything. Okay. So what was I talking about? Yaku. Okay, there is all simples, and there's all sequences or pinfu. But in all simples is also called Tanya. And there's also Toy Toy, or all triples. So if this is common to see in like Silver Room, is people will pon. It's also called Pon Palace, because it's just a palace built of triples. So if you get 4 triples in a pair, that is a Toy Toy or all triples, which is worth 2 han. So it's actually worth more than pinfu or simples by itself. But it can be pretty hard to get, actually. And there's also honitsu, or half flush. That is a yaku that you can get from having just all of one suit. You're also allowed to use honor tiles in there. So for instance, if you only have so tiles, that'll be a honitsu. Or a chinitsu, or full flush, if you have all of one suit, not including honor tiles, and that's actually worth 5 han. And I'm very sorry that I don't have the little panel here that shows all of these. I don't know why I don't. I may have accidentally deleted it or something. But yeah, it'd be very nice to have these actually all listed out. But right, and another one that I didn't mention is Yakuhai. If you have 3 of a Yakuhai tile, like that one that Ennui just called a ponon. If you have 3 Yakuhai tiles, then that will give you a yaku. That's worth 1 han, which will allow you to actually win. If you didn't have that yaku when you opened your hand like this, you used chi and pon, you would simply not be able to win. So you need to have some yaku of some kind. Right, and so what are yakuhai? Let me bring the honors. Right. So we have these 7 different honors. Which of these... Yakuhai have to be honor tiles, but which honor tiles are Yakuhai? Well, the dragons are always going to be Yakuhai. The white dragon, Haku, green dragon, Hatsu, red dragon, Shun. If you have 3 of any of those, you're going to be able to win the hand, because you'll have Yaku, even if you open. What about the winds? So there's 2 wind tiles at any given point that are going to count as Yakuhai. There's the round wind, which is the wind that is the one that's in the middle of the screen there. It says East 1. East, if it says East 1 or East something, that means East is the round wind, which you can use as Yakuhai. And there's and Ennui here is currently seating in the South Sea. We see that S there. That means that South or Non is also a Yakuhai. So there's going to be 5 tiles that are Yakuhai, 2 winds, and then the 3 dragons. So that's what it.
There could be just 4 wins if you're sitting in the
Right.
same seat as the round.
Right, like
Right
now.
now.
Yes. So now the round wind and the seat wind are the same. So there's only 4 Yakuhai tiles. There's three dragons and then the east wind. For other people, they're going to have two wind tiles that are Yakuhai, but for ennui in particular, there's only 1 wind that will work, but it's actually worth twice as much. But what does that mean in order for something to be worth twice as much? Like, how does score work? That's something that we can briefly talk about, give an introduction to, because it's a little bit complicated, but we can simplify it into something that is a bit more understandable, I think, and ignore some of the complications. Okay. So here's what we have as a simplified score. You just count the number of Hans you have, and there's going to be a corresponding score if you're dealer or if you're non-dealer. So if you're non-dealer, the score is going to be 1,000 points for 1 Han, 2,000 points for 2 Han, 4,000 points for 3 Han, 8,000 points for 4 Han, 12,000 for 6 Han, and 16,000 for 8 Han. And that 4 Han score for 8,000 is called a Mangan. For 6 Han, it's called a Hanuman. And for 8 Han, it's called a Baiman. And for a dealer, it's increased by 50%. So we can see that these are just like doubling each time as you add on a Han, up until you get into these high scores, and they stop doubling and they start increasing more slowly. But at least until the first 4 Han, they just double each time. So for a dealer, 1 Han is worth 1,500, 2 Han is worth 3,000, 3 Han is worth 6,000, and 4 Han is worth 12,000. Yes. Yes, Ennui is trying to collect achievements and stuff, trying to collect Sankansu and stuff like that, especially Yaku. And also, yeah, it works out that we don't need to worry too much about Ennui stressing out in ranked room because it's kind of just messing around in silver at the moment. Right. And yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to voice any questions. I don't know if there's anyone in the chat right now who is like just learning or who has this level of question. But yeah, feel free to ask anything because it'll definitely be more useful if we can help someone directly. We got a few people in the chat, so there may be somebody who needs help or who would desire help. Okay, and I also we talked about calls a little bit, so I should probably show this. Let me get rid of this score here. But yeah, for scoring, and let me get rid of this other one here, tile types. Just keeping in mind for scoring, basically like each additional Han is going to double your score. So getting additional Hans is very useful, and there's a lot of different ways that you can get them. It's better just to learn one at a time. Like if you're still in the process of learning Yaku, just try and learn like, okay, I'll try and get all simples, I'll try and get Pinfu, I'll try and get all triples, and learn a few at a time. Look at the list of Yaku and gradually like increase your knowledge of what is kind of stored inside your head that you can access. Yes, that simplified scoring is actually pretty accurate, and there's only some special cases where it's going to be off by more than like a couple hundred or like yeah. I actually don't want to talk about what makes it different because that's just going to be confusing. But yeah, that simplified scoring, I think, for the most part, is going to be pretty accurate. Okay, so let me talk about calling here. So this is useful to say that for Chi, you can call Chi on the player to your left to complete a sequence. But then you can't use those tiles for anything else. As we see, we're putting them to the right there. For that pawn, the Chi is the same. You put it to the right. You can't use those tiles anymore. But it's important to know that for Chi, it's only the player to your left that you can call that on. It's not any other player. For pawn, you can call it on any player. I actually was playing for a while before I realized that you couldn't call Chi on anyone. When I was playing against the AI in Yakuza, it was quite a long time before I realized that because I wasn't reading any of the rules. And finally, for calls, you can call Khan on any player to complete a quad of 4 tiles, which it's basically the same as a triple for most purposes. For almost all purposes, you can think of it as a triple. It also flips an extra Dora and an extra Uradora indicator, which is something that we haven't talked about yet. We see that the Dora is up in the left corner. The Dora indicator is 5-pin, which means that the tile to the right, 6-pin, is a Dora. So an important thing is that the Dora gives you a Han, but it's not a Yaku. And I think that this can be a little confusing. So what that means is that just because you have a Dora in your hand, that doesn't mean that you can necessarily win. You might not have Yaku. But if you do win, it will add 1 Han to your score. So it will basically, each Dora in your hand, that 6-pin being in the hand, doubles the score. And that red 5 also counts as a Dora. The one of each of the 5 tiles also counts as a Dora, and it's just colored 5. So there's a lot of that allows you to get a lot of ways to like increase your score to get up to those higher scores like 4 Han, 5 Han, 6 Han. But yeah, so that's the Dora indicator. The Uradora indicator. This is, I think, an important thing that some people may take a while to realize is that they're like, well, sometimes I get an Uradora and sometimes I don't. I'm not exactly sure why. The reason that you can get an Uradora is because you've declared Richi. That's one of the benefits of declaring Richi. Keeping your hand closed and declaring Richi is that for each Dora, there's going to be a corresponding like hidden Uradora that you can't see. But it has a potential of adding more value to your hand. And in a lot of cases, there'll be a pretty significant chance that you'll get additional score from an Uradora, especially if there's more than one. But yeah, just the important thing is you get Uradora when you declare Richi. You don't get Uradora if you open your hand or if you don't declare Richi. Right, so that's an important thing to know. All right, checking to see if there's any questions or anything. Okay, so we've gone over calling. I want to make sure that we actually go over things and not just assume that they're known.
One note I wanted to make about calling. For the longest time, I didn't realize why a tile was done sideways. And since there are 3 other players at the table, and you will always turn one of those 3 tiles sideways, and it corresponds to where the player you took that tile from is sitting in relation to yourself. So if you called, say, Chi from the person on your left, then the leftmost of the 3 tiles of the call will be the one turned sideways.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And at some point, we can probably show an example of that, which I think it's a little hard to understand. Yeah, you always turn the tile that you called sideways, and it's going to point towards the person who you called it. And yeah, when we actually see a call, we can show an example of that to show exactly what that means.
I don't really want to open this hand, but I'll pawn the north just to make the point.
We don't need to do it right away. We can do it at some point. Okay, so gone over most of the things here on the list. I still feel really bad about not having the Yaku list because that's really important. We could actually go over the list of Yaku after this game, maybe just to go over them one by one. Yeah, when there's time. We don't need to do that right now. But okay, so the next thing, an important thing, Furitin. This is a rule that a lot of people have trouble with, but it's extremely important. So if you have discarded, this is the basic rule. It's very easy to state it, but it ends up being very confusing for a lot of people. So just keep this in your head if you can. If you have discarded any tile that you can win on, you can only win by Tsumo up until the point where you change your weight. So an example of this. Suppose you have a great weight. You have a weight on the 3-pin, 6-pin, and 9-pin, a 3-sided weight. But at some point earlier, you discarded the 3-pin. That means you can't win on any of those tiles. You can't win on 3-pin, you can't win on 6-pin, and you can't win on 9-pin unless you Tsumo it yourself. And unless you change your weight to something else that you haven't discarded any of your weights. You can't have discarded a single one of them no matter what. Or you can't win off any of them. That's what Huritin means. And this is very important because it's the basis of it's the basis of a lot of defense in the game. Right. So For instance, if someone has discarded the 1 pin, they can't win off of the 1 pin anymore. So you know that if they have declared Richi, you can discard the 1 pin or any tile that they've discarded, and it's totally safe. And later on in Richi Book 1, we can learn about more complicated ways that we can use Furi-ten for defense, and we can go through all the possible ways that a person could win one by one and discount them, and be a big brain genius to decide that, okay, this tile is almost certainly safe. And yeah, that's very useful. So that's why you need to know Furi-ten. You need to understand it. You need to understand this definition. It's not a complicated definition, so I don't think that it's asking much to understand it, but it is confusing if you don't spend a couple minutes thinking about it, going over a couple examples, and understanding it as it happens in the game. A couple more rules on Furi-ten which are important, but don't come up that often. You have temporary Furi-ten. If you pass on a run while not in Richi, you'll go into Furi-ten until the start of your next turn. So if you have a hand that can win, and someone discards a tile you can win on, but you say, no, I want to win off of someone else, or I want to sumo because it just happens that I need to, for whatever reason, I need to win off of someone else, or I just want to. I want to win on a different tile, whatever. I want to make my hand have more value to it. There's a lot of reasons you may want to, although it is kind of rare that you will. If you are not in Richi, you have that option. If you are in Richi, you don't. If you pass on a run while you're in Richi, you never can win again, unless you draw the tile yourself. You can still win by Tsumo, but you can't win off of anyone else's discards. And winning by Tsumo Tsumo just means drawing the tile yourself. Ron means winning off of someone else. This is something that we haven't actually explicitly said. So yeah, that's Furi-ten. Very important.
A good point. Mm-hmm. A good point was made in the chat about a lot of people will have a wait on, say, a 6-peen and 9-peen, and they've opened their hand. Mm-hmm. And they'll think that they have a 9-peen in their discards, mm-hmm. and since they wouldn't have all simples with that tile, mm-hmm. that it would not make them Furi-ten. But mm-hmm. as far as, Mahjong is concerned, mm-hmm. you would have had a complete hand of 4 shapes. Oh, this is...
Right.
Hold on. You tell me.
Yes, that's a very good point. This definition could be stated more clearly. I think it would be stated more confusingly. I think this definition is fine for the sake of giving someone a definition that they can understand. But yes, just because a tile doesn't give you Yaku, so you can't win, that doesn't mean that it's not included into Furi-ten. It just matters that it completes your hand. So it's not winning, it's completing the hand. Even if it completes the hand in a way that can't win. Completing the hand in the sense of having 4 complete blocks in a pair. So, right. I guess we could say if you have discarded any tile that can complete your hand, you can only win by Tsumo until you change your weight. That's not too difficult. That's not too complicated. So, right. I hope that's clear. Right. Yeah, the typical case, something like all simples where you have a weight, say you have all simples and you have a weight on 3, 6, 9, and you discarded 9, you can't win on 3 or 6 still, because 9 would complete your hand, even if it would take you out of all simples and mean you don't have a Yaku anymore, so you can't win. So Furi-ten, again, it's not that complicated, it's just people find it very confusing, for whatever reason, just because it's a little bit counterintuitive, I think. But yeah, it's not that difficult. Have faith in yourself. You can understand it. Okay, let me hide that. And the last thing I have here, I could do a bit of a review. Maybe now I have a list of additional Yaku here. Maybe now I can sort of stop paying attention to these panels, and we can start paying attention to Yaku. Because even if you don't win this hand, someone else is going to win this hand, and they're going to have some Yaku that we can look at. When this person opens, so maybe they're going for all simples. They're opening on 6, 7, 8. So they could be going for a hand that has only tiles 2 through 8, which would give them all simples. Ennui decides not to chi there. And we can see that the tile 8 there is turned towards Ennui. That means that they call the tile 8-so from Ennui. And that's what we were talking about earlier. The tile that is called is turned, flipped over sideways, and they pointed towards the person who they called it from. And yeah, thanks very much for pointing that out. Yeah, there was that definition that I said was Furitan was a little bit mistaken. I think it's still fine, but definitely good to at least make that comment. All right, now we're one away here. We can see that Ennui has one called triple, or now has a called Kan, is now in Tenpai. So it has that Kanshan shape, 4-6, waiting on the 5-pin. As I was talking about the hand, it developed quite quickly. But yeah, we see that Ennui has called 3 completed blocks there. The 3-4-5, the 2-2-2, and the quad of 7s. Then has a pair of 4-so, and the Kanshan 4-6, waiting on the 5-pin. All right. And this isn't a really great weight. However, if Ennui draws the 3-pin or the 7-pin, it can be upgraded. So suppose that Ennui draws the 3-pin. Ennui could then drop the 6-pin, and it would then be a 3-4 shape and be waiting on the 2 and the 5 instead of just the 5. When this person got all simples, 2 Dora and red 5, 4 Han, so it's about 8,000, right? It was 1, 2, 4, 8. But they got the points there mostly from Dora. We can see how Dora can really inflate the value of a hand, especially when we've got these red 5s.
All I wanted was 3 cons. That's all I wanted. That's all I need.
It'll be okay. It'll be okay. All right. So this is a hand here. We see that it has a 1-2-3, a 1-3 pin, and a 1 mon. We can imagine it having 1, 2, 3 in all 3 different suits. And in fact, that is a Yaku called Sanshoku, or mixed triple sequence, which is a hand including the same sequence from each suit, which is worth 2 Han closed and 1 Han open. So if you actually get that closed, it can be worth quite a bit. If you get it open, then it's the same as like all simples. It's just worth 1 Han and whatever other like Dora you get in there. Although you could also get like Yakuhai with Sanshoku because it only constrains the three sequences. Let me hide that. And we had someone do a con over to the right. They had con on the 2s. That closed con. So a comment on cons. The closed con does not count as opening your hand. So their hand is still closed. For the sake of something like Pinfu, all sequences requires you to have your hand closed. And Richi, you can only Richi if your hand is closed. You can still do that when you've done a closed con, which is a closed con is something you can call if you have all 4 of the tiles inside your own hand. If someone else drops the 4th tile, you can do an open con. And the open con means your hand is open. So the thing about the closed con is that it means you can still get the second Uradora. If you have an open con, then you don't get any Uradora because you can't reach it anymore because your hand is open. With the closed Dora, your hand is still closed, so you can still Richi, so you can still get the Uradora that you get from Richi. And in the chat, they're talking about Junshan. And Junshan is also called a full outside hand. And that means that you only have tiles from 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9 in your hand. There's also the half outside hand, or Chanta, which is when you have only 1, 2, 3, and 7, 8, 9 in honors. So it's kind of like the half outside and the full outside, the half flush and the full flush. Those are kind of the same thing. Half means that you can include honors in there. And actually, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't see what Yaku that was.
It was just Tanyao.
Just Tanya. You see a lot of that in Silver Room, right? And in general, when there's red fives, you'll see a lot of all simples hands because people will get value from the Dora because there's so many Dora, bountiful Dora. So if we can, could we take a quick look at the Yaku because we unfortunately don't have a panel that lists these, right? So yeah, one Han we have Richi, as we talked about a lot. The Richi gives you one hand. If you keep your hand closed and you Richi as soon as it's complete. Then we will have a nice Yaku from that. And Anwi, can you say something real quick?
About what?
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that the sound registered because I think the music from the game is not registering, but your voice is. That's a little weird, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't typically listen to music at all anyway. I just put it there, to have.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about all symbols a lot too. We see an example there. It only contains tiles 2 through 8 because 2 through 8 are the symbol tiles. They're not terminals and they're not honors. And then we have the fully concealed hand, which just means that you drew the tile yourself. So if you win a hand by Tsumo and your hand is closed, to get that Yaku, that one Han for Tsumo, you need to not have made any calls. So even if you draw the tile yourself, if your hand is open and you don't have any other Yaku, you can't win that way by Tsumo. But you will, if your hand is closed and you draw the tile yourself, you'll get one additional Han. And then we have the seat wind. These are all Yakuhai. We talked about Yakuhai. The seat wind and the prevalent wind or round wind, which is like the east tile in these east games is always going to be the round wind, and the seat wind is whatever seat you're sitting at. And then we have the dragons, the Hatsu, the Haku, and the Chun, or the red, white, and green dragons. And then we have Pinfu, or all sequences. So a hand has to have 4 sequences, and there's some additional complications to it where it has to have a good weight. It needs to be closed. It needs to have 4 sequences in one pair, and it needs to have a good weight. And the pair can't be Yakuhai. So this hand confuses people a lot because of all these conditions, which is why I didn't list these out. But you can just think of it as all sequences, right? And hope you get lucky if you don't understand all these conditions. But they're not that hard. You just need to have a good weight, which is this 2-sided weight. And you need to have a non-Yakuhai pair, which means like you could have if you're not sitting on the west seat, you could have a pair of wests, and that would work. But most honor tiles are not going to work as your weight because most honor tiles are Yakuhai. But Pinfu I think is a hand that you might end up getting a fair amount, even if you don't understand what it is, because it's pretty logical to build towards a hand that has a good weight anyway, and that's the hardest thing is to get that good weight. And it's easier to get sequences than it is to get triples anyway, so you'll often get all sequences and a pair that isn't Yakuhai and a good weight. And even though you're not trying to meet these conditions, you might meet them anyway. All right, and then we have the pure double sequence, also called Ipeko, where we see here is 1 2 3 1 2 3. So you just have the same sequence in there twice. Then you have Rasengan Khan, which maybe we can skip that one. That's a fun one. And Under the Sea, Under the River. We can skip all of those. Let's go to Ipatsu. I don't want to confuse people by going over all of these, so let's go to Ipatsu. If you win a hand within 1 turn after declaring Richi, you'll double your score from that. You have 1 extra Han. Up to the point where it's worth 4 Han, right? Like if your score we can't double the score every single time, or else it'll get ridiculous. You'll get a score of 100,000 points. So it needs to slow down and go to that it goes from 8,000 and then 2 more Han will bring it to 12,000. So it's like gone to like 1/4 speed at that point. But anyway, yeah. So Ipatsu is also pretty common that you'll win within 1 turn after Richi. It sounds hard, but it happens pretty commonly actually. And then we have the Dora, which we talked about. It's not Yaku, as indicated here. It's not something that will allow you to win the hand. It just boosts your score. It doubles your score for each Dora that you get. And certainly we won't talk about Kita, which is specific to 3-player Mahjong. Okay, could we go
Even though it's all I want to talk about.
Could we go up to 2 Han? And let's just talk about a couple more, the common ones like Toy Toy. Right, 3 quads. Let's go down to all triplets, please. I want to kind of skip over a lot of these.
Triplets was all triplets for some reason.
Right, so we have all triplets, which is also called toi toi. We have four triplets, and it also says they can be quads. Like I was saying, quads can usually be treated the same as triplets without missing anything. They're pretty much the same in terms of like scoring purposes. So yeah, the toi toi, which is worth 2 han, and obviously your hand can be open because people are calling pawns all the time to get all triplets. And then we have 3 concealed triplets, which I mean, if you manage to get these triplets without calling them, you'll definitely get some additional score. But I think we could kind of ignore those. The other ones were the flush hands. There's a lot of hands here Yaku here I kind of want to ignore because there's so many. You're gonna kind of overwhelm people by going over all these Yaku. So yeah, half flush. That's if you have all of one suit and you also have honors. So here we see it's only Mon tiles, and there's also some South and Haku tiles there. And so that's worth 3 han if it's closed. It's only worth 2 han if it's open. So yeah, you can get it's worth 2 han, but you can also get additional score from Yakuhai. So say you get a triple of South and a triple of Haku, and South is your wind. It's your seat wind. Then you'll have a 4 han hand, which is going to be worth about 8,000 points, which is quite a lot.
It's worth noting that when these Yaku that say -1 han after making a call, so if you have opened your hand, they're worth 1 less han. If you have trouble remembering which ones that applies to, it's any hand where if they can incorporate runs, they will lose a han. So like all triplets is always 2 han. Like toi toi is always 2 han because it can't incorporate runs, which are a lot easier to get since those shapes for runs are a lot better than they are for triplets. But since a half flush or a half outside hand or anything like that can incorporate runs, that's why they lose a han.
Right. So yeah, I actually hadn't thought of that. That's good to know. Okay, so if the hand can incorporate runs / sequences into it, then keeping it closed will give you extra score. So the last one I think that we haven't covered is Sanshoku. Oh, there's also Chinitsu or full flush, which is just like Honitsu / half flush, except you're not allowed to have honors, and it's worth like a buttload more han. If you keep it closed, it's 6 han. If you have it open, it's 5 han, which is going to be 8,000 points. So it's pretty hard to get unless you start out with lots of tiles of the same suit. But it is worth a fair chunk of points. And yeah, the last one wanted to look at was Sanshoku, or mixed triple sequence. So yeah, again, this is one that is -1 han after making a call. So Sanshoku, or mixed triple sequence, we just see it's having the same sequence 3 times in there: 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So yeah, that's another useful one. Okay, so I think we've covered sort of the basic Yaku that I wanted to just go over and say, well, if you can learn those Yaku, you've learned like that'll get you a really long way. Certainly, the other Yaku are useful to know. But I think that those like 8 different Yaku that we covered is like most of them that you'll commonly see. I think. Would you agree with that, Ennui?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like at the start, the only ones you really need to remember at the very beginning is Yakuhai, all simples, and Richi, and then I would suggest just kind of adding 1 every time you play after that.
Right, and there's a couple on here on the list of additional Yaku that I have here. We talked about some of these like Sanshoku and Ipeko. There's also Chitoi, which is 7 pairs, and Itsu, which is full straight. So if you get 1 through 9, that will give you 1 through 9 in a single suit. That's worth 2 han closed and 1 han open. And again, because it has sequences in it, or it can contain sequences, it gives you an additional han for being closed. And yeah, and Chitoi is like a really special hand. It's like the one hand that is not divided up into 5 blocks. It's divided into 7 blocks. Oh yeah, the other one is Kokushimuso, which we won't talk about. The 13 Orphans. we shall not denigrate our learning stream with talk of Kokushimuso. But yeah, so we talked about a lot of Yaku. Just try and learn a few of the basic ones, and try and get them. Gradually build them into your repertoire. Build that up, and once you've gotten like 7 or 8 of these that we've talked about, you'll be really far along. You'll be able to get quite a ways with those. Even just with Richi alone, I think you can get pretty far because you'll by accident get a lot of stuff. So just in terms of like getting out of Bronze Room and like getting some wins in Silver Room, like even just using Rishi, keeping your hand closed will be enough. And you may end up doing better than other players because they're opening their hands and like doing crazy stuff that is not necessarily doing good things for them. So yeah, I think that that covers what we wanted to cover. Do we want to play another game and try and get some of these Yaku?
Sure, I'm down for that.
Mm-hmm. We can talk about which Yaku can be gone for, which Yaku are useful for various things. Go into a bit more detail on these, I think. And really, this is all down to practice, trying to learn these, and it takes a while. Like, don't be impatient with yourself. It takes a while to learn these Yaku. Expect it to take like hours. It takes hours, many games. And here, this is a hand that looks like it could become a flush hand, given how many so tiles are here, right? So that's a possibility. Or it could also, if Ennui draws another Haku tile, another white dragon, it could just become a Yakuhai hand, because it's got 2 Dora in it, so that is adding some value. Using those Dora would be nice. See, it's got a Dora from the red 5-so and from the 4-pin, which is next to the 3-pin that we see up in the left corner. And let's see. Okay, there's a draw that gives Ennui a Kanchan shape, 4-6. So now Ennui's got how many shapes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like it could be 6. Once you start having a lot of distinct shapes, you kind of start wanting to drop them. That's something that we'll talk about more in when we get into Rishi Book 1. Right now, we're just covering the bare basics of how to play. And we'll see where Ennui goes with this. That 6-7 shape next to the Dora can be a little bit hard to deal with because you don't want to drop the Dora. But now Ennui has drawn another 6, so that's next to a tile next to the Dora, and then an additional shape aside from that 6-7. Could view it that way. But what have we got here? We've got the Kanchan 7-8, Kanchan 4-6, Dianmen 6-7 in pin. And then we have the 1-2-so Penchan, the 4-5 Dianmen, 5-7 Kanchan, 7-9 Kanchan. Or 5-5 pair. We have pairs and Kanchans and Dianmen kind of intertwined. It can be hard to say exactly what the shape is because they're kind of mushed together. And it looks like Ennui has opened and maybe going for an all simples hand here. When you have a shape like 7-8, that can make all simples harder to go for because you can't use the 9. It makes it have only 1 tile of acceptance. Ennui is thinking about calling on this Kanchan here. Also thinking about not calling it due to the Richi. Richi is scary. Oh, we got a deal in. What are they winning on here? They had a closed hand. 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7. It looks like they just have. Oh, they have a pure straight. They've got the pure straight or Itsu, 1 through 9 on the pin tiles. Okay, so they got quite a big hand here. They got Richi, they got pure straight for 2 Han, they got a Dora, and they got something else. Okay. And yeah, and like Brog, is that how you pronounce it? Brag, saying all simples 2 Dora. That brings it to 3 Han, which is going to be about 4,000 points. Talk about the points as well. Points take some getting used to. But this is when I started playing, I did not really think about the points as doubling. I think that's a very useful way to think about it. Like having a door in your hand doubles your score. Getting the Tsumo or the Richi, all of these things individually double your score. So it's like it's a magnifier, an amplifier. Okay, and we getting some nice shapes here. The 3, 4, 5, and the 5, 6. So that's a complete block, a complete run 3, 4, 5, complete sequence 3, 4, 5. Next to the Yanmin 5, 6, and then the 5, 6 pin, the Penchan 8, 9 pin, and then the 6, 7, 8, 9. And dropping the pin there, so that upgraded that from 8, 9 Penchan to 6, 8 Kanchan. So the Kanchan is better than the Penchan, right? So that was a strict upgrade. And also allows all simples, because the 9 can't be used for an all simples hand. There's another 9, but it's just 1. So you can get rid of it at some point, maybe. Get simples. Have that option to open. And then that A pin, or 8 so, is a little bit awkward. 6, 7, 8, then 8, 9. And Ennui opted to get rid of the 9 so and be left with the 6, 7, 8, 8. And may be able to... oh, that's an interesting draw. 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. So now Ennui is 1 away. And this is a hand that could become simples and pinfu. It could have all sequences and all simples. And but someone just won on a green dragon.
Yeah, I was going for pinfu, all simples, red 5, Sanshoku.
Okay, yeah, so that'd be quite a lot. That could reach 6 Han, which would be 12,000. Yeah.
Yeah, Sanshoku being the mixed triple sequence there.
Yes, mixed triple sequence. Actually, yeah, I didn't notice that as you're building the hand that it had mixed triple sequence in there. And so this is a hand that has 4 pairs in it. It could actually become a 7 pairs hand potentially. Although when you've got now it has 5 pairs, so it's actually 1 away from a 7 pairs hand already. But Ennui's not going for it. See, a lot of times people don't want to go for a 7 pairs hand because it can be very slow. Even when you're 1 away, like it's kind of a slow 1 away. So it's hard to make that commitment to go for 7 pairs. But
especially because I already had a complete sequence and right. I have Dora in a nice shape.
However, I would encourage people when they're new players to go for 7 pairs if you have like 4 or 5 pairs and you're not feeling good about the hand otherwise. Going for 7 pairs may be easier than you think. Like, it sounds... I feel like for new players, 7 pairs sounds crazy. Like, how am I going to get 7 pairs? But it's easier than you think. If that's how you're feeling, if you feel like it sounds impossible, then it's actually easier than impossible. It is kind of hard, but it happens. It happens pretty often. It's not a crazy rare Yaku or anything.
I actually love 7 pairs. I do really enjoy going for it. It's just this hand was
right
better suited for other things.
Right. If you have a hand that has like this hand has the 3 green dragons and the 2, 3, 4, it's already close to a complete hand in a normal hand that you can reach, or that can be opened with the 3 green dragons. So the thing about 7 pairs is you're always going to be waiting on 1 tile, and you have to keep it closed. So it's naturally a pretty slow hand and one that's not going to have a really great weight. In the best case, you're going to have like a weight on an honor tile or a terminal tile. But you're not going to have like a 2 or a 3-sided weight. Oh, and now Ennui switching from the 2, 3, 4 to the 3, 4, 5, adding in that extra door that doubles the score again. So there's now 3 door in there. So this hand is going to be worth at least 8,000 points, or at least around 8,000 points. If Ennui does a Richi, it can go even higher. But the weight is kind of bad. So Ennui might decide to keep it to go into what's called Dama, which is to keep the hand out of Richi, but in a state where it can win. So people might still deal into it even though there's no Richi, which is kind of scary for the other players if they're against a player who will do that. The thing is that Richi tends to increase the value of your hand a lot because it will at least double it, and it may quadruple it or more. Right? If you get if you Richi and you get an Ura and you Tsumo, that's 3 Han, which multiplies your score by 8, right? Because you doubled it 3 times. So that's quite a lot, isn't it? Oh, but unfortunately, Ennui Richi'd and dealt in. That can happen too. It's scary.
Garbage.
Yeah. Mahjong is a scary game. It's a survival horror game. We do what we can.
My hand was worth 12,000 points.
Yeah, it was quite a lot.
I had mixed triple sequence too.
Mm-hmm. Getting a lot of Sanshoku.
Yeah, it comes up like you should. Sanshoku is a hand that you should make sure that you can incorporate, or you leave the option available to incorporate a lot more often than. You should kind of be thinking about it every single hand. Like, it doesn't end up coming to fruition all that often, but you should always be thinking about it.
Right. Unless you're like a beginner. But this is generally good advice if you're getting more towards the intermediate stage. Being able to see opportunities for getting Sanshoku without slowing down your hand is a very good thing. But certainly for beginners, you don't need to worry about it. You just need to worry about learning the basics. So I don't want to give people the wrong idea. But yeah, Sanshoku can actually be. This is another thing, is that for beginners, Sanshoku seems like a really piddly Yaku because it's only worth 1 Han if you open. But the thing about Sanshoku is that you can get it in many different. You can combine it with many other things. So for example, you can get, if you keep your hand closed and you get Sanshoku, you'll get Sanshoku, Pinfu, all simples, Richi, whatever, and this can easily add up to like 6 Han, and you get a Hanuman, right? I think this is a common way to get a Hanuman, is to have Sanshoku. So yeah, it can be. This is the kind of thing that can be surprising, is how valuable these Yaku can be if you manage to get them in the right situation. And that's the same thing for 7 pairs as well, is that 7 pairs can actually be worth quite a lot. And it may be unexpectedly valuable. Given that it's just a 2 Han Yaku and it's so hard to get, you might feel like, wow, it should be worth more than that. It's so hard to get. But it actually can be worth quite a bit. Because yeah, all these 1 Han Yaku, Richi, Ipatsu, Tsumo, Dora, Uradora, Pinfu, simples, like if you get like 4 or 5 of those, suddenly you'll have a huge hand. So this is one reason why keeping a closed hand and reaching is generally a good way to get like a valuable hand. The only other way is to just get like a bunch of Dora in your hand, really. And that's a reason why. I think the reason why a lot of times beginning players are recommended to keep their hand closed is for one, if you open your hand too much, you like never learn anything, because you keep on getting Yaku's hand and you keep on like trying to build hands really quickly, but you don't really necessarily learn how to build hands quickly. You just learn how to like call everything. And also, if you open your hand, you get cheap hands. So you don't end up getting a Mangan or a Hanuman that'll win you the game. And most of the time, if you get the opportunity to Richi, it's kind of recommended that you do Richi in most situations. Although I know Ennui is not the hugest fan of Richiing on bad weights and stuff like that. And what did they get? Double Richi, all simple. So double Richi is something we haven't mentioned, which is just if you Richi on your very first discard, the Riichi will be worth 2 Han instead of 1.
So much for my dealership.
Yeah, it's pretty rare to see double Riichi, so it's not really something we talked about. But we just happen to see one here. Okay, so we're going to go for another Sanshoku. So Anmi has an opportunity here to go for a 6-7-8 Sanshoku, and has been going for them. So I won't be surprised if we see an attempt. Mm-hmm. This could also, it seems kind of far from it now, but this could become Pinfu. It could become, so Anui's wind is the north. If Anui draws another north wind, those are gone already, never mind. 2 of them have been discarded, so there's no way for Anui to end up with 3. At most can have 2, right? Silver is actually a little bit slow too, isn't it? Or is it just these players?
The last table actually wasn't that bad, but yeah, Silver Room tends to be slow. You also have a lot more people rage quitting in Silver than you do in casual matches.
So one thing we can note here is that if Anui calls the 7-pin or the 7-so, that will be a Tempai for a Sanshoku, because then Anui would be waiting on the other 7 in order to have all 3 sequences of 6, 7, 8. So this is Ishan 10 for Sanshoku in a way that can be opened. So Anui has the option to call that, and did call it. 7-so is unfortunately kind of a bad weight. And also, Anui can't really change the weight without losing the ability to win, because won't have the All Simples Yaku, won't have any other Yaku other than Sanshoku. Because Dora does not count as Yaku, if you remember. There's a Dora there, but it's not enough to win on. And we see that one of the 7-so is the Dora indicator, which means there's only 3 left.
Yeah, up in the top left, which we haven't really talked about, like, this 7 is telling you that the 8 is Dora. Like, whatever comes after is what is listed as Dora. The winds are in seat order, so east tells you that the south is Dora, south tells you the west is Dora, west tells you north is Dora, north tells you east is Dora, right. And then, that's fine.
That's just fine.
That's fine. That was just that kind of game. Just that kind of game.
Yeah, so as Anu was saying, the Dora indicators for the honor tiles, that's something we actually didn't specify. If it's a number tile, then it's the one to the right, right? The Dora we get from the Dora indicator is 7-so, is the 8-so. For the wind tile, it's going to be based on seed order, as Anui said. You could also say that it is. Anui's going to yell at me if I say that, so I won't say that. But I was going to say it's counterclockwise again, and you're going to say it's. But anyway, for the dragons, it's just alphabetical. Either using either way, the Japanese or the English. So if you go red, it goes red dragon, and then it goes. Hold on. How does the alphabet work? It goes green then it goes green dragon, then red, and then white. Or alternatively, it goes chun, and then haku, and then hatsu. Right. Either way, it's alphabetical. Same way. So yeah, that's how you do the Dora indicator for the dragons. You just go alphabetically. Like if the Dora indicator is the last one, then it'll cycle onto the first one. So if the Dora indicator is the white dragon, it'll be the green dragon, because it goes from the last letter of the alphabet, cycles around to the first. And similarly for the winds, it just cycles around. So you can figure out what the Dora indicator is by just looking at the seats. So yeah, I think that we covered what we wanted to cover here, and some of the stuff is actually covered in Rishi Book 1, Chapter 3, so we'll actually have covered some of that already. And I hope that this stream is useful for some people who are newer to the game, and they can reference this. And at some point soon, we can start covering Rishi Book 1 and talking more about strategy and efficiency, and going into more detail on actually like how you make these kind of decisions, like whether or not to Richi, and what tile you should discard for the best efficiency, and how you separate the hand into blocks in the best way, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, thanks for joining us. I think we're going to stop here. Do you have any last comments, Anui?
No, that was all. Just remember, and like the Mahjong Soul tutorial is actually, we were talking about it in the chat. The Mahjong Soul tutorial is actually pretty good as well, especially like if you have no experience with the game. I mean, it's very, very quick, but it has a couple of like quiz questions in the middle, which I really like.
Right. Yeah, I do think that like it's hard to, for some people, it's hard to learn without actually like going through the game itself. So I hope it's useful for that. And yeah, definitely if people have any questions, they can always stop by any of our streams or any of my streams that I have scheduled. You can just look at my schedule to see when I'm going to be on. And I don't know when we're actually going to do another one of these learning streams for Richi Book 1. Maybe it'll be the same time next week, or maybe it'll be like on a Tuesday. I think it'll be either on Friday, Saturday, or Tuesday. Does that sound okay to you, Anui?
Yeah, in general, that sounds okay to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think we can set an exact time because it depends on when both of us are available. But yeah, we'll try to do it on some time that's already on my schedule, so that people can be aware that it might happen at one of those times. But yeah, thanks a lot. I guess I'll end it here. And thanks so much for joining us. I love you. And Anui loves you too. What? All right. Bye-bye, everybody.